No matter how far you run, back home is always waiting for you. Welcome to the depths. Hello, welcome to Reading from the Depths. My name is Lecton. Thank you for spending some time with me again today. Today I have a review for you of Sonora Taylor's Errant Roots. This is being published on 15th October by Raw Dog Screaming Press, and I was given a complimentary copy in exchange for an honest review. Now, this is a tight little novella that is told in a folk horror kind of modality. And this is actually part of a larger series. It's called The Selected Papers from the Consortium of the Study of Anomalous Phenomena. And the whole series is a collection of novellas that are selected and then edited by R.J. Joseph. And she also writes a foreword for each of the entries in the series. And she serves kind of as the crypt keeper or the narrator at the beginning of a Twilight Zone episode. So every novella has a foreword that gives almost a summary of what is going to be contained in the story and talks about the themes that come up as a result of the story. So every different novella is presented as if it were a single case study from this institute. However, all of the novellas have different authors, and I haven't read any of the other ones. This one is the sixth in the series, but going by this one, I'm interested in going back and reading the others because I had a real fun time with this story. So what is this particular story about? Well, this story follows Deidre as well as her mother Harriet, and Deidre is 24 years old, and she finds out she's pregnant, and she tells her mother, and her mother is insistent that they have to go to her family, to Harriet's mother and her extended family. And the reason this is strange is because Deidre has never met anyone from her mother's family. Her mother ran away when she was pregnant with Deidre and has never gone back and refuses to talk about her family with Deidre. So Deidre has no knowledge of her extended family. So all of a sudden, Harriet, the prodigal daughter, is insistent that they go back and visit the family. And in the foreword that is written by R.J. Joseph, it talks about what it means to inherit the legacy of your family and that they have to go back to a murderous matriarch. And so you know going in, this foreboding that something isn't quite right, okay? And so you go back to this family and you meet Deidre's grandmother, as well as her great aunt, as well as two other aunts, as well as a number of cousins. But notice you don't meet any men because there are no men in this family, or any boys either. And so, in folk horror generally, folk horror has to do with the old and the new clashing, right? The city and the rural or something like this. There's always going into a space where you don't belong. So in this case, it's Deidre who's living a contemporary life, going back to her family where you have to face the ritual customs of her family. You have to face the traditions and the ideas and the superstitions that her family believes are what gives them longevity and power and strength. And so there's this clash between Deidre's acceptance and her life in the contemporary world, and the family's positioning themselves in these series of superstitions and this legacy of potential violence or potential ritual activity that is discordant with modernity, so to speak. One thing I really enjoyed about the story is she does a great job of creating a tense atmosphere right away, and the kind of unsettling vibes that you get from a lot of folk horror is present right in the beginning. And within that context, our main character of Deidre is really interesting. I feel like she's well-rounded, she feels genuine, she feels like someone you know. The other ancillary characters are slightly less interesting. They're more of caricatures, but not in a bad way, just so far as they are fitting into the mold of what is expected in a folk horror story. They don't feel like they're phoned in, they don't feel like cardboard cutouts, but they don't have as much depth or they aren't quite as interesting as our main character. But that's okay, they fulfill the necessary role within this story. So they do a good job of populating the background to make everything a little more disquieting, a little more unsettling. So the mood and the atmosphere and the world building and the character development work really well together. Our main character has this overwhelming sensation of being lost, which I think is really important for the story. She's a young woman, she's pregnant, she's not married, though she has a steady boyfriend, and just being pregnant is all of a sudden overwhelming for her. And then on top of that, her mother has said, now we have to go meet these people you've never met before. We have to go home again to a place I've never spoken about, to people you don't know. So Deidre's main way of being in this story is of being lost, of being unknowing, of not knowing what's in front of her or where she's coming from, both. So she's always kind of turned around, right? And so this feels like an important part of the story, her continual not knowing and what she does to try to make sense of the world around her. I think the pacing on the story is interesting. The first half of the story goes at like a really fast pace, and you hit this climactic moment about 50% of the way through the novella, which is like really exciting and it pulls you along really well. It's quite propulsive in that way. It's kind of nonstop once the ball starts rolling. But then you hit this very big climactic moment about halfway in, and then things almost all of a sudden become much more languid, right? They slow down quite a bit. And this was clearly intentional on the part of the author. So what happens is after this big climactic moment, then you have to sit in the aftermath of that. And you have to try to make decisions about how to move forward knowing what you now know. You're still moving towards this inevitable outcome, right? Because there's still more to happen in the story, and it's projected what that's going to be. You can see it coming down the road, but you're not running at it full tilt anymore. So now you have time to investigate and to reflect and to make decisions. So this change in pacing is an interesting storytelling device, and I'm a little hot and cold on it. When I think about it a lot, then I kind of enjoy it, but when I was reading it, it felt a little strange. You know what I mean? So you have to take it or leave it, whether that's going to be something that is interesting to you. But it's a marked shift in how the storytelling and the pacing moves from the first half to the second half. But I should mention, this whole novella is less than 100 pages. I read it in one sitting. So it isn't like you're sitting there for hours and hours and hours just waiting for something to happen, right? So everything moves quickly in a relative sense, but within the confines of the story, the pacing changes from the first half to the second half. What I think is interesting about this novella and what it's doing really clearly is it's asking us questions about legacy and about inheritance and about what we owe our family, what we owe people that came before us, and if we owe them our identity, if we owe them our agency, right? Because Deidre all of a sudden is put into a position where all of her control of her own life, all of her ability to make choices about how she wants to be in the world is stripped from her, because she's told, you have inherited this legacy from your family and this is what you have to be part of. And I think that is something that resonates with all of us, whether or not your family have these, superstitions and rituals that may or may not borderline in the occult, or you just have other traditions and histories within your family. So the idea of being trapped by what we inherit from the people that come before us. And if we can free ourselves, if we have the agency to free ourselves from the kind of trauma of our family, if that is a trauma, it isn't always, right? The idea behind these traditions is that these traditions give family strength, they give family purpose, they give energizing focus, right? Yet our main character has been so separate from them that she doesn't feel that same way. Yet other members of the family do. So then what does it mean to be outside of what the rest of your family presents as a normal way of being? In these brief 100 pages, I think Sonora Taylor does a great job of bringing up these ideas in a really kind of natural way that are fun to think about. And by using this folk horror modality, where the stakes are turned up a lot higher than most of us have in our everyday life, we have a chance to consider them and reflect on them in like a more interesting kind of way, right? A way that is separate from our own struggles, but then gives us a mirror to look back on how we relate to our family, how we understand the role of agency within a family unit, and how we understand the role of both inheritance and legacy. So I think that's all I have to say. It is quite a short novella, so there's not much more I can say without giving anything away. I did enjoy it quite a lot. I thought it was a lot of fun. I'm interested in reading other books in this series, and I'm interested in reading other things that Sonora Taylor writes, because I thought the writing was strong, it was clear, it was direct. The pacing was a little strange. When I was reading it, it threw me for a loop, but on reflection, I think it actually worked well and it served the story. But I'd love to hear what you think. Have any of you had a chance to read this yet? Or have you read any of the other novellas that are part of this series? Let me know down in the comments. I'd love to hear what you're thinking. But for now, thank you for spending some time with me today. I appreciate you. Be kind to yourselves, take care of each other, and go slowly.